Hello, I'm Julia Mennell from Spark Coaching and Training, and this is the third and final recording of a three-part series looking at how to handle tricky coaching clients. So far we've had a look at two previously different challenging coachees, and now we've got the third one. So the first one was the disengaged coachee, the second one was the over talkative, and now we're going to have a look at the defensive coachee. And as I mentioned in the previous videos, there isn't really anything such as a tricky coachee. It's really about tricky behavior. We can all be difficult at different times. So the focus will be very much on how do you handle this type of behavior. So let's have a look at the defensive coachee, because they look very similar to the disengaged coachee, but in actual fact they are engaging with you. They are speaking. You don't get sparse responses, but the responses that you get are more likely to be antagonistic, blaming. You may feel like you're being drawn into an argument here with somebody. They're quite resistant, and there's a lot of rationalization going on. So they're blaming other people rather than themselves. So let's have a look at how that shows itself and what we can do. So let's think about what's really going on here, like we did with the other two coachee types. So first of all, it's a little bit like the other two. The behavior that you see is only the tip of the iceberg. It's finding out what's going on underneath. And often people defend because they feel threatened. So the word defensive, we often are familiar with that phrase, defense mechanism. It came from psychotherapy, and now it's gone into our everyday language. But if we think about that, that's somebody defending themselves because they think they are unsafe, so they feel threatened. So the threat will appear, anxiety will be caused, and then they will defend. So for some people, that defense is about withdrawing. For others, it's about coming out fighting, and you'll get much more of an aggressive stance. So the human mind is finding a way to defend itself, basically, unconsciously, of course. And it's a way of perhaps avoiding difficult or uncomfortable truths for that person. If you're getting a lot of irritation, pushback, perhaps a person even appears angry, then often where there is anger, there is fear. So that's always something useful to keep in the back of your mind, is where is the fear here? And it stops you being pulled into an emotional game yourself and taking it personally. You will also find that they do a lot of blaming others to protect themselves. So they're pointing the finger outwards rather than looking at it, where the responsibility lies with themselves. And that can sound very much like a drama triangle's being set up. So for them, they would alternate perhaps between the persecutor position and the victim position. So, they will persecute you at some times, or persecute and blame others from that position. And then that allows them to go into victim mode. Now, the problem with that then is that you can easily be pulled in as the rescuer. And as we know, coaches always want to help. So that's a psychological game that you could easily fall into with this type of coachee. They're sometimes out of touch with reality, and they're holding on to a story, a narrative that they believe is true, and they are going to defend it to the bitter end. So again, it's almost like walls being put up here. They are literally defending, their castle, as it were. So what are the traps for coaches with this? Coaches for this type of coachee? I think the big trap, first of all, is starting to collude with them and believe their excuses. That they can be quite persuasive, and telling a good story, it may sound like there's some awful people around them, and you can feel quite sympathetic towards their cause, but you're only hearing their side of the story, of course. So you do have to be careful, are these reasons, are these excuses, or are they actually rationalizing away some of the things that actually other people are seeing? So, like we talked about with the other different types of coaches, is thinking about, why are you there coaching them in the first place? Is this something that's been raised as part and parcel of what they're going to be coached on? As I said before, it could a trap that you can fall into is to rescue them, that you end up taking too much responsibility because they won't. And then you might get into this battle of truth and evidence. You feel that you are in some sort of tennis match where they're saying something which doesn't sound reasonable, and you've got evidence, and it's very easy to sort of throw that in, and then they throw something back. And before you know it, you think, hang on, I'm getting into an argument with my client. How's that happened? So that's another thing to be careful about if you're bringing in an alternative version of events. As I said before, you can make it personal and start emotionally reacting to this person, either depending on your style, beating yourself up, thinking you're a rubbish coach and you're not handling this very well, or thinking that it's about you personally and there's something that you've done, or something that the coachee doesn't like about you. And in that situation, it's very easy to lose trust. So I had a client once who, unbeknownst to me, had a really bad experience with a previous coach. And so he reacted to me in a very defensive manner, because for him, there was a lot of apprehension there about, was the same thing going to happen again with this new coach, i.e. me? So no wonder he wasn't trusting, and he was very guarded with the way he was. So how do we make this work? By asking some really good, challenging, provocative questions that actually might start to create doubt and uncertainty in their mind. So it's not about throwing lots of evidence in to dispute their story, is to ask questions so they start to unpack their own story. They start to chip away at the foundations of the narrative that they've perhaps set up. And this is where good coaching skill comes in, around, questions, reflecting back. And that leads on to the next point, is that sometimes using some of your activities that you have in your coaching toolbox would help them to see new perspectives. So an example of that would be something like chair work or perceptual positions if you're of a NLP bent. It gets them out of the chair, gets them moving around, using their body, but it also helps them to look at other people's perspectives. So the drama triangle, for instance, you could even set that up in 3 chairs. And get them to take up each of the positions and ask questions about that in each position, or even draw out the drama triangle on the floor in the coaching room and ask them to stand in each of those positions as well, just to try and create some more of that doubt and uncertainty about how they're seeing things, and insight should emerge from that. I think it's also important to still be supportive and compassionate with this person, because they're fearful, but the way they're coming out fighting, it can be very difficult to feel empathy for this sort of person. I've had clients where I felt like, do I like them very much because of how they are? So being compassionate, but still taking at face value what they're saying. So those are some key things about how to deal with defensive coachees, and that's the last of our group of 3. and we've looked at the Disengaged Coachee in first video, the Over-Talkative Coachee in video 2, and this was the final one in video 3. So in summary, remember, it's not about the difficult person here. It's about difficult behaviours, and behaviours can be changed even if they are long-lived, entrenched. They can be changed, and use that behaviour as data to try and make sense of it. As I said previously, using video is great now, particularly as we're coaching a lot more online. Asking people to watch a video of themselves between sessions can be very enlightening, particularly for those who don't have much insight on how they come across to other people. And if that's part and part of the objectives of the coaching, then that's all the better for it. So I actually have a pro forma that I sometimes use with clients that has questions on that gets them to view their video from a different perspective. So some of the questions might be, what would your 8-year-old self make of this? What would a parent say? What would a teacher say? So that they're watching the video with some purpose as they watch it. So remember, it's a coping strategy. It's not personal. The coaching will allow you to bring the difficult behaviour into the spotlight and to name it and call it out and reflect that back to the coachee, because it's going to be an obstacle and just keep coming up time and time again. So tying in the consequences of what happens for them when this behaviour occurs in the workplace, at home, so they start to see that there's an incentive for them to change. Sometimes the resistance will still be there. I've written a book on abrasive coaching clients, and sometimes I do a little bit of reverse psychology on them. And if they've had a lot of negative perceptions off other people, but they still can't see it, a good question is to say, okay, how do we change their perception of you? It still amounts to the same thing, but it doesn't quite press people's defensive buttons in the same way. The other thing as well is rather than focusing on the things that we don't want them to do anymore, we need to put something else in its place. It's a little bit like giving up smoking. If there's something that's anchored to every time somebody smokes, if you cut the smoking out, what else are they going to be doing instead? So there needs to be something positive, a new positive habit. And that leads to the last point, because if they're making positive changes and you're seeing that happen, then your role as a coach, as we know, is to encourage that and to reward that change of behaviour, because it's tough, and that's what they will need from you. So that's the end of these 3 videos. If you would like some more information about the work that I do at Spark Coaching and Training, and also some other tools, tips and techniques, visit the website that are helpful for coaches to develop themselves and help their coaching clients. Thank you, and bye for now.